We're finally back from Italy and I couldn't wait to start riding again, and what a bike to come back to, the Kawasaki ZR 1400. Now, today we're going to be discussing what are the most reliable types of motorcycles. Are they high performance bikes like this here? Or are they dirt bikes, that don't have necessarily high performance engines, but they take a lot of abuse? Are touring bikes more reliable? Well, that's what we're going to discuss today. So let's jump on and let's go. Now, before we get into this video, I think it is only fair to mention that most, if not all, bikes have the potential to be very reliable. A lot of it is going to come down to the age, the condition, the mileage, the service history. Just because a motorcycle might have a lot of mileage, let's say over 50,000 miles, nearly 100,000 miles, it doesn't necessarily mean that that is going to be an unreliable motorcycle. But like with most things that are mechanical, there are certain machines that tend to be more reliable than others. This ZR 1400 here is quite a reliable bike. I mean, this one is 2016, it's had regular oil changes or oil changes once a year, and it's done 8,000 miles, but even if this bike had done 3 or 4, 5 times that, it would still be a reliable motorcycle because I'm looking after it. I'm trying to keep it clean, I'm trying to keep it up to date with its oil and filters, its fluids, and I ride these bikes regularly. There's nothing worse for a motorcycle's reliability than for it to not be ridden. That's when bikes die, you guys. That's when bikes become unreliable, is when they sit either in a garage or they sit outside someone's driveway for years without being used. That's when bikes have a habit of having issues that are weird, weird problems, even like weird electrical problems that just pop up randomly. It is quite interesting how bikes can degrade over time if you don't ride them. And that's including old bikes, alright? If you bought an older motorcycle, maybe from the 90s, the 80s, or gosh, even the early 2000s, you can consider old these days. If you keep riding them and you keep using them, you keep not turning them over, right? Not just turn them on every once in a while whilst they're in the garage. You have to actually ride them, right? If you can do that every once in a while, then the chance of that bike lasting longer are significantly higher. All right. But okay, let's not talk about it in those terms. But let's talk about specifically what type of motorcycles are the most reliable, or more reliable generally than the others. In the intro, I mentioned dirt bikes. Dirt bikes, they don't tend to have a long lifespan because they're effectively abused. They are machines that have been designed to be abused. And okay, if you get a dirt bike and you ride it on the roads, I mean that's not a big deal. Like, I don't know, if you get like an enduro bike or a supermoto, something like that, or an enduro bike that is registered for road use. I mean, you don't really see that very often here in the UK, but I can see some people doing it. Then that bike probably has the potential to be just as reliable as any other road bike. Is when you take them off-road is when they when they probably get the most amount of wear and tear. I also mentioned high performance motorcycles, and again, they have the potential to be very, very reliable over their lifetime. I mean, all of the performance bikes that I've owned have been very, very good. Even the ones that you could tell have been abused throughout their lives, like the ZX9R, for example, didn't exactly have the best life in the world, but it still ran like a clock. It was perfect in every way that was important. It was absolutely perfect. Cosmetically, absolutely not. It was the exact opposite of perfect in that regard, but mechanically totally sound and a very, very fun, very, very good bike. I mean, I think I put on 3,000 miles in in 1 year on that bike when we ended up selling it. Didn't skip a beat whatsoever. But by the same token, high performance bikes that have been ridden like high performance bikes, again, they seem to have a shorter lifespan. Bikes like a 600 or a 1000, a Super Sports, things like that. Again, depending on how they've been ridden throughout their lives, they can either be very reliable or they can have, not much life left to them. But generally speaking, they are designed to run like that. They are designed to run hotter. They are designed to run at higher RPMs. So I wouldn't really be afraid to use the bike as it was designed. I think the problem is that people, they have a habit of redlining them far too often, and even though, again, that's not technically a big issue for a high performance bike either, it does just increase the wear of the engine. So bikes like that, bikes like dirt bikes, unfortunately, as much as they can be ultra reliable, there's a lot of variance and a lot of, what's the word? God, there's a word I'm thinking of, it's not coming to mind at the moment. But there's lots of potential for a bike to not be as reliable as it should be, because those bikes have a habit of being abused by their previous owners. And again, if you do your oil changes and things like that on time, and even like valve clearance checks and things, which for the most part isn't really a big deal, but if the valve clearance checks have been done and they've got records of that, then that means that the bike has been looked after. Because not many people would open up the bike and get the valve clearances done. It's a very labor-intensive job, and it can be very expensive mechanics. So, but if you see things like that on the service history and it is a high performance bike, then you're probably onto a good one. Now recently we did a video on how much mileage is too much mileage, and I'll let you go and watch that one for yourselves, and because we go into a bit more detail about kind of like where you should draw the line, I suppose. But as I said in the intro, it doesn't really matter. It depends. It depends on a lot of factors. If you know the bike has been beaten up and it doesn't look like it's been looked after all that well, and it's a high mileage bike, then potentially it doesn't have much time left on this earth. Or maybe it'll fail an MOT and it'll cost an absolute fortune to get it fixed and ready for an MOT. All of these things play a part in that equation, but bikes where really mileage doesn't matter are touring bikes. Low performance, low rev ceilings, big giant cylinders. And think about it this way: the most reliable engines, full stop, are bigger engines like trucks, lorries, things like that. Bigger engines with bigger bores, bigger pistons that aren't working as hard to generate the power. Those engines generally tend to be more reliable, like the trucks here, like the lorries, right? What they call in America, the semis or semis. Engines like that tend to be the most reliable. They can have hundreds of thousands of miles put on them and they still run like new. So any motorcycle engine that kind of emulates that is gonna be a reliable motorcycle, and generally touring bikes tend to have that design. They're almost designed more like car engines, you know? 6,000-7,000 RPM redline, loads of torque, not a lot of horsepower, not a lot of top end horsepower, but bikes like that generally tend to have a much longer lifespan than their high revving, high performance counterparts. Even though the ZZR here is a high performance engine, you don't really need to use all the RPMs to get a ton of power. So most riders would ride these bikes at well under 11,000 RPM, 10,000 RPM, because it's simply not necessary. And so the engines aren't anywhere near strained as much as smaller bikes with high rev limits, because the only way you can get the power out of them is to rev the tits off of them, you know? The bikes like a ZZR, they don't need to worry about that. For me, generally, touring bikes and sport touring bikes generally have the best chances of being the most reliable types of motorcycles, and even adventure tourers as well. Now what's funny is that adventure bikes, like that one funnily enough that just went past us there, if they're used off-road on a fairly frequent basis, then similarly to dirt bikes, they can wear out pretty quickly, because that is quite a lot of abuse for a bike to take, even if it is a tanky adventure bike. But if it's more an adventure tourer, so it looks like an adventure bike, but has got street tires, street suspension and all that, and a down-tuned engine, then similar to sport touring and touring bikes, adventure tourers have the potential to be very, very reliable. And even like my FZ6, it's not strictly speaking an adventure bike, but it kind of has that look, kind of has that profile to it. But it's got the engine derived from an R6, but it's producing more torque, and its RPM limit is about 2,000 or 3,000 RPM less than the R6 variant. And I've seen loads of those FZ6s with like 90, 100,000 miles on them, and they're still going strong. Those bikes are absolutely bulletproof. I mean, maybe not with me at the helm, because I'm pretty much abusing it, pulling wheelies and all that on a fairly frequent basis on that bike. But nonetheless, a motorcycle like that, even though it has a high performance derived engine, with that lower RPM limit and with that more torque, that more lower end torque, it has more chances to be a more reliable motorcycle over the longer term. Things like rust don't generally become an issue on bikes, because whereas with cars, especially with older Japanese cars, they have a long life, they have a lot of exposure to the rain and salt and grit over the winter months here in the UK and the Northern Hemisphere in general. And as you put on tens of thousands of miles on those cars, they will tend to rust over their lifetime. Me and my wife, we recently bought a 2005 Honda CR-V. We bought it as like a family car, but those cars are absolutely bulletproof. Those engines will last forever, especially with regular maintenance. They won't skip a beat. But it has been picked up on the MOT of points of rust, which is an issue. And that's the thing, when you've got a car that's got 130,000 miles on the clock or 200,000 miles on the clock and it's 25 years old, then yeah, it's probably going to have some rust issues. But bikes don't generally put on that kind of mileage, and they're cleaned usually more frequently than cars are. And because you can get in all the nooks and crannies in bikes when you're cleaning them, rust doesn't usually play a part in a bike's overall reliability when it comes to getting them through road safety tests and MOTs and all that stuff. But on the whole, you guys, I think that's pretty much, if you want a reliable motorcycle and you plan to put tens of thousands of miles on it, a touring bike like a Goldwing or a Silverwing. Is it a Silverwing? No, a Silverwing, that's the scooter, isn't it? The scooter variant. No, what's the other? Pan-European, that's the one. Yeah, Pan-European, they're very, very good. A Versys 1000, a Versys 650 from Kawasaki, or just the 650 from Kawasaki, full stop. Very, very ultra reliable engines and loads of fun as well. The 1000 SX from Kawasaki, that's a great bike. Again, you can put tens of thousands on those bikes and they'll just eat them like they were nothing. Even bikes like the Honda Rebel, the Africa Twin, very, very reliable bikes. Gixxis Thao, or maybe even the more recent GSX-S 8 from Suzuki, very, very reliable bikes. I mean, yeah, Yamaha, God, where'd you start with Yamaha? Well, the FZ, of course, the MT line of bikes, ultra reliable. The oh gosh, what are they called? The XSR. Well, I say that. I mean, the XSR 900 specifically, and well, it uses an MT09 derived engine anyway. But yeah, the XSR 900, not the GP variant, because that is a more highly tuned performance engine. But having said that, it's not producing any more power than the XSR 900 or the MT09, so they're probably as reliable as one another, to be perfectly honest with you guys. But there are lots and lots of correct choices when it comes to a reliable motorcycle, and as you've probably noticed there, most of them are Japanese. But BMW tend to do very, very reliable touring bikes as well. Like a Ducati Multistrada is probably, or a Monster even, is probably one of the most, or two of the most reliable bikes that Ducati make. An Aprilia Tuono, any Tuono is probably going to be a good bet. But I say that the 660 engine is pushed very hard. It's a parallel twin that's producing 100 horsepower at the top end of its RPM range. It is a high performance engine, so I wouldn't expect those engines to be as reliable as maybe a V4, but you know, it depends on the V4, because if you're looking at a Panigale or maybe a V2 Panigale, then again, those are high performance engines and they probably won't last as long. But the engines that are tuned for touring bikes or adventure bikes, they tend to, or nakeds even, they tend to be a better pick for reliability. Now look, after I've said all that, okay, like I said at the very beginning, it doesn't mean that a Super Sport will be unreliable for you, even an old one. Take my Triumph Daytona 955i for example. It hasn't done a lot of mileage. I think it's on 29,000 miles currently, and it's a 2003, so it's clearly been left in a garage for years and years and years on end, and it's probably missed a load of oil changes. It came with no service history, but when I got on it and I rode it, I knew it was solid, I knew it was a decent bike, and I knew I could rely on it. And lo and behold, it's been an absolute bulletproof bike, even though it's a high performance engine and it's designed to be in those higher RPMs a lot of the time. It's a great bike. My old CBR 600RR from Honda, again a high performance engine. It had done 35,000 miles by the time I sold it. It still ran like a clock, was still absolutely perfect. What a bike, absolutely loved it, and I miss it an awful lot. It was bulletproof. Such a great motorcycle, you guys. But that's pretty much going to be it for today's video, everyone. If you've liked this video, and look, this video isn't designed to annoy people, okay? I'm trying to cater for as many people as possible, but like I said, a lot of it's going to come down to the way the bike has been looked after, its service history, things like that. Mileage not so much, age not so much. It all depends really on how it's been looked after at the end of the day. So I hope you guys appreciate where I'm coming from here. It's more than likely that you're going to find touring bikes with tens of thousands more mileage on the clocks than you're going to find super sports, you know what I mean, things like that. So, but you guys let me know down in the comment section below what you think, and what you think the most reliable bikes are. You know, are cruisers in there? Are they the most reliable bikes? I don't know. I've not had as much experience on cruiser bikes as some of you lot might have. So let me know down in the comment section below where you think cruiser bikes sit in the list here. And well, if you found this video informative, if it's helped you out, then make sure you go ahead and leave that like, hit that subscribe button down there and that notification bell so you don't miss any more videos from us. But thanks again, everyone. You guys, you take care, you ride safe. We'll catch you all in the next video. Have a good one.